achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're doing a special bedside podcast to give you my predictions for UFC 199, which will take place on June 4th from the Forum in Inglewood, California, featuring not one but two amazing title fights. All of my predictions available on the podcast for the main card. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Hopefully. Now, as I said to my Twitter followers and Facebook, I've suffered a back injury that's preventing me from sitting for prolonged periods of time, so I'm actually in bed doing my podcast, hoping to recover. Lots of drugs, lots of a couple trips to the hospital to get things straightened out. So the plan is to do very quick preliminary predictions, as clearly I am behind, and then get right to work on the bet pack. In the event I don't get the bet pack posted, and you purchased it, or the subscription, I will make it up to you by adding another free event. If you're a single subscriber, you'll just get UFC 1 Fight Night 89 for free, and if you're a subscription pack purchaser, I will give you the next event, the first one to start in August, for free as well. But my goal is to have everything posted ASAP. Now, you can also head over to the website and check out the polls. You can vote on who you think is going to win each fight. You can also check out the prediction panel posts. They do a great job there, as the preliminary is also available. And as always, follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions, or look me up on Facebook. Shouldn't be very hard to find. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you for your understanding, and let's get to that first prediction of the main card. Our first prediction of the evening takes place in the UFC's lightweight divisions. The 11th ranked Dustin the Diamond Poirier, 19 wins and 4 losses, takes on the returning 13th ranked Bobby King Green, currently holding a record of 23 wins and 6 defeats. Now, this is a big fight for both guys who are trying to crack into the top 5 in the UFC's lightweight division. Green has had his chance, especially facing Edson Barboza, where he came up just short. He's also fought some higher caliber opposition in Josh Thompson. For Poirier, he's certainly a fighter on the rise since returning to the lightweight division after a fairly successful but still unsatisfying stint for him as a UFC featherweight. Now, Green comes into this matchup having sat out of action for over 19 months with a couple of injuries derailing potential fights. He had won 8 fights in a row dating back to his Strikeforce time prior to his loss to Edson Barboza in his last appearance. For the Diamond, he's 3-0 at lightweight, 6-1 in his last 7 matchups, which includes a knockout loss against Conor McGregor. He had a very impressive win over Joseph Duffy in his last matchup, and it was the first time he won a fight in his last 5 that he didn't actually end his opponent's night via TKO or submission, so fairly impressive there for Poirier. Physically, Green 1 inch taller, Poirier will have a 1 inch reach advantage, and the Diamond is 3 years younger. Now, King Bobby Green is a BJ purple belt, 8 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission. He is 6-3 on the scorecards, and he has 1 loss each by knockout. He has 1 loss by TKO, which came very early in his career. He was also submitted twice as well. For Poirier, BJ brown belt, 9 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission, 4-2 in the scorecards. He's lost once each by knockout and submission. So both guys have been finished before. Both guys have nice, fairly significant win totals in all areas. Now, statistically, these guys are very close. Striking, both guys land over 4 strikes landed per minute, a slight 0.3 strikes edge to Poirier, but nothing significant, and he gets hit about 0.3 times more per minute, so defensively, offensively, the numbers are a bit of a wash. Neither man has averaged big takedown numbers, both sitting at under 2 currently with roughly a 30% completion rate. We did see Poirier come off his last matchup, Poirier with a nice 4 takedown series of takedowns. He landed 4 overall against Duffy that really turned the fight in his favor, but Green, difficult man to take off his feet, 81% takedown defense. Now, you look back at that fight with Joseph Duffy, where Poirier was the underdog. He was really pushed, and he came out strong in the second and third round. He got hurt during the early exchanges against Duffy. He was really covering up and getting blasted along the cage. As I said, he relied on his wrestling. He relied on his takedowns to turn that fight in his favor. When the striking exchanges weren't going his way, he switched up. He's very good at changing game plans. When he's looking for takedowns, looking to push his opponent into the cage, change levels, remove their base. He has very good ground and pound once on the mat, and he keeps pounding away to the head and the body, mixes up well, looking for submission opportunities. At distance, long strikes, keeps a pretty decent pace. Chin is a bit of a question mark. We've seen him tagged a couple of times and hurt, even in fights where he wasn't finished. Now, you look at Bobby Green, he's very confident in his skills. He throws a lot of head games. Guys are hitting him with shots, and he's just kind of wiping them off like they're nothing, making it very apparent that didn't hit me. He did that 1 too many times against Edson Barboza, and Barboza just kept coming forward, and Green can pretend all he wanted. They weren't hurting. They were still scoring. Green likes to try and roll with his punches. He holds his hands relatively low. Lots of feints and fakes, but his volume is something we're going to talk about in a moment that needs to be picked up if those feints and fakes are going to be effective. He uses a boxing-oriented stance, cuts off the cage very well. A few low kicks, but just overall, like I said, not enough volume. He'll throw combinations. He'll work to the body as well. But again, simply too infrequent with his volume. He doesn't do enough consistently to really overwhelm guys. When you look at the guys that have defeated Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor knocked him out. Cub Swanson and the Korean Zombie both mixed together volume striking and takedowns. Two areas well in, but they were able to just do better. Green doesn't wrestle enough, even though he's a capable guy on the ground, and he doesn't put up enough volume. He has one legit stoppage in the last 8 UFC fights, not including that James Krause low blow fiasco with Big John McCarthy involved. But Green's not the type of guy who's shown the statistics or the finishing ability to beat Dustin Poirier. Green has had trouble on the mat at times in the past. He can be taken down, even though he has good takedown defense numbers. He can be taken down. I think Poirier outworks him on the feet, keeps landing big strikes, lands a few takedowns periodically in the fight, at least threatens with them. And I think he takes advantage of Green having a little bit, having a little bit of ring rust coming to this fight. And my prediction is Dustin Poirier to defeat Bobby Green by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card is a battle between a pair of old war horses, as the 15th ranked Dan Henderson, 31 wins and 14 losses, takes on Hector Showweather Lombard with a current record 34 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, and 2 no contests. Now this is Lombard's return to the middleweight division, where he was absolutely dominant in Bellator. He fought 3 times at 185 pounds in the UFC, going 1-2. And the big thing with him is he's cutting into welterweight, where he physically was a better size, but the cut was simply too much for him. He did look good as a UFC 170, winning 3 fights. One was overturned to a no contest, but still he won 3 fights before losing to Neil Magny in a back and forth and very entertaining matchup. For Henderson, he is finally talking about retirement at his advanced age. He feels like he's much closer now than he was not that long ago. He does only have 2 wins in his last 8 fights, which is probably also playing a contributor into him saying it's time to walk away. Now, one thing's probably worth noting, both guys formerly trained together, at least trained at the same camp. Lombard made it very clear that Henderson really didn't pay him much attention when they worked there, so it's not like this is not a buddy-buddy matchup. There just might be a little bit of familiarity with the 2 fighters there. Physically, Henderson's usually the smaller man, but not in this fight. He's 2 inches taller and will have a 3-inch reach advantage over Lombard. But keep in mind, Hector Lombard's an old dude. He is still 8 years younger than Dan Henderson. Now, what we have here is Henderson's wrestling versus Lombard's judo. Neither man has overwhelming takedown numbers and predominantly uses those skills to keep their fights vertical, and that's very important for both men. Henderson has 15 wins by knockout, but he's 2-4 in fights ended by submission, 14-7 on the scorecards. His last 3 losses have come by knockout. Those 3 losses by knockout have come in his last 4 defeats. He was also submitted by Daniel Cormier in that span as well. Now, we all know what Henderson does well. He has that H-bomb, that massive right hand that he uses to headhunt opponents and put them down. Everything that he does is centered around setting up that knockout blow. He'll throw a lot of short inside leg kicks that are followed by the big right hand. He'll fire a couple right hooks in succession, looking to try and find a home for one. He's very focused on scoring the knockout. The big thing with Henderson, though, is his vaunted chin, which has allowed him to take damage and close the distance against more talented strikers to land that power. It's not nearly what it used to be. And now that he's got a little bit careless at times, and he's getting cracked, he's getting knocked out, where formerly he could eat that punch and land his own. Now, for Hector Lombard, 19 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. He had never been finished prior to the last matchup, 8-4 on the scorecards, but he's coming off his first knockout loss, TKO defeat against Neil Magny, who basically exhausted him, wore him out, and pounded him down after some tough moments early on. And that cardio was a major question mark for Lombard in that last fight. Additionally, he had that huge layoff, and there, of course, was all kinds of talk about PEDs being in his system and helping him to fight the way he was before. He gassed out after nearly finishing Magny. He put everything into putting Magny away and nearly had him done, and simply ran out of energy and got finished later in that fight in a very controversial stoppage that probably went way too long. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, Lombard does some of his best work in close proximity, short combinations. That's what he dropped Magny with. He has big power. He has surprising hand speed for a guy like that. He's able to really go after guys and put his hands on them at a pace they're not expecting. I expect that speed to be magnified since he's fighting at middleweight at 185 pounds. I think that's something we're going to see him take advantage of, especially against Dan Henderson, who's a much slower, plodding fighter. If Lombard gets stuck in the outside, he has a tendency to get lulled into a lack of activity. He just doesn't put out enough output. He's constantly looking for opportunities to try and close that distance, but gets stuck out there, and that really hurt him. Going back to the Tim Boach fight, that was a big letdown. Now, Dan's aggression, I think it's probably going to result in Lombard having to exchange and getting that opportunity to throw, because Dan likes to come forward wildly and really push the pace. I think it's going to favor Lombard. The question is, how does Henderson win this matchup? He has to use feints to keep Hector guessing, keep him pinned on the outside, use that Greco-Roman wrestling base to either maybe take Lombard down like Okami did, more importantly, tie him up in the clinch, make him work, and wear him out, and eventually land that H-bomb if he gets the opportunity. The only problem with Dan Henderson is he doesn't have the cardio either to exploit Lombard in the later rounds, and he will be on the wrong end of a guy who's worn out, getting beaten up. Lombard, the other thing is he doesn't have the chin to exchange with Lombard. If Hector hits Dan Henderson, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. I think Lombard's speed helps him to close the distance. I look for him to land short combinations along the cage and eventually hurt Dan and finish him. My prediction is Hector Lombard to defeat Dan Henderson by knockout. Fight number 3 in the main card takes place in the UFC's featherweight division and is probably, excluding obviously the title fights, the most pertinent fight on the card when it comes to the title picture, as the 4th-ranked Max Blessed Holloway, 15 wins and 3 losses, takes on the 5th-ranked Ricardo the Bully Lamas with a current record of 15 wins and 4 losses. Now, Lamas has already had his shot at the title, and he lost against Jose Aldo. He also lost to Chad Mendes, so he's looking at the situation saying, I've lost to 2 of the top guys. Neither one of those guys will have the title belt right now. Certainly, it's wide open. For Holloway, he is the only featherweight to have gone the distance with Conor McGregor. He has not fought for the title. He wants his opportunity. He wants to prove that he is ready to go. He comes into this matchup having won 8 in a row, including pretty impressive victories over Cub Swanson, Jeremy Stevens, and an injury-related TKO victory over Charles Oliveira, in a fight I would still like to see happen down the road. Now, for Lamas, he's coming off a win over Diego Sanchez, who appears to be one and done as a featherweight. He also has pretty noteworthy wins over Dennis Bermudez, Hawker Diaz, Eric Koch, and Cub Swanson. His only losses last 10 fights are against the aforementioned top-ranked guys in Aldo and Mendez. Physically, Max is 3 inches taller, but Lamas will have a surprising 2-inch reach advantage, and the Hawaiian is the younger man by 9 years. Now, Holloway is a BJ blue belt. He has 6 wins by KO, 2 wins by submission. He is 7-2 in the scorecards. He does have a loss by submission on his record as well, which came against Dustin Poirier in his short-notice UFC debut. He's very young. For Lamas, NCAA Division I wrestler, BJ black belt, 4-3 in fights ended by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 8-1 of the scorecards. So those 3 knockout losses. Of course, he got stopped by Chad Mendes in his most recent defeat. They'll show you where he is vulnerable, and if Max can put it on, that could be an avenue for him to pick up the victory. Statistically, Holloway, 5.49 strikes landed per minute compared to just 2.47 for Lamas. Holloway is a volume striker. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Lamas does get hit at about 1.5 strikes less per minute, so defensively he is less willing to take a shot, does a better job of mitigating his opponent's offense. On the ground, Lamas 2 takedowns per fight, an average 33% completion rate. He did land 3 against Diego Sanchez, 2 against Hawker Diaz and Eric Koch, and showed those are key aspects of his game. But for Max, 81% takedown defense. He has been taken down multiple times in fights. McGregor and Bermudez each took him down 4 times, but in his last 8 matchups, he's given up a ground is willing to commit to takedowns, or he's cleared up his takedown defense. It's probably a little bit of both. Now, for Holloway, he's a very measured fighter. He's excellent timing. Really uses a nice right jab, very long spinning attacks. He will counter. He will go to rip to the body as well. He has improved himself drastically on the mat. Body lock takedown against Jeremy Stevens. Uses his long limbs to control guys and set up submission opportunities. When he fought Jeremy Stevens going back to the fight, it wasn't a great first round for Max. His output wasn't there like it normally is. A lot of clinch fighting was jamming him up, not letting him get things off, and it kept the fight, that first round, much closer than a lot of people expected it to be. And when you look at his numbers overall, you see an interesting trend. When he's fighting opponents that have a threat of scoring a takedown, he usually lands between 50 and 60 strikes per fight. Right in that range. 60 seems to be his ceiling. When he's fighting guys that he's more convinced that he can shut the takedowns down or they're not going to be a threat, he picks up between 70 and 100 strikes landed per fight, which is a big, big jump. And that's something we'll have to keep in mind here, because Ricardo Lamas is absolutely a threat to take him down. Now, Lamas moves exceptionally well. He does a good job of closing the gap when striking. He has power in his hands. He'll work his leg kicks in very effectively. He hurt Diego Sanchez with leg kicks, and that's something he needs to do here against a much taller opponent with longer legs that he can exploit and attack. Also, Lamas, a very good takedown game, smothers his opponents very effectively, keeps working, drags his opponent to the mat, puts them on the defensive, and really goes to work. He had a lot of success against Hatsu Aoki. He's a very good ground fighter. Same thing as Diego Sanchez, had a lot of success on the mat in that fight. As I said before, Holloway is not the same fighter when he's forced to deal with the threat of being taken down. Even if opponent can't take him down, if the threat is there, it's going to slow him down. Lamas overall is a multi-dimensional fighter. Technical striker, he has power, he can wrestle, and he has pretty good submission skills. That is a lot for Max to deal with, even though I feel Max, has a lot of skills of his own. He has to fire back. I still like the way Lamas presents himself. This should be a very close fight, but look for Lamas to match Holloway's diminished volume because of the threat of the takedown, land a couple of those key takedowns, at the very least control the action in the clinch, and my prediction is Ricardo Lamas to defeat Max Holloway by decision. We move now to the co-main event of the evening. It's in the UFC's bantamweight division as the defending champion and newly recrowned champion, if you will, Dominick the Dominator Cruz, 21 wins and 1 loss, takes in the only man to hand him that loss, the person who handed him that loss, the number 2 ranked California kid Urijah Faber with a current record of 33 wins and 8 losses. Now this is the third fight in a trilogy between these two, currently tied at 1, but considering Faber's win, it seems like it was another lifetime ago, back when these guys were fighting at featherweight in the WEC. It's hard to really see this series being tied at 1 when you really understand, other than just saying, hey, each have a victory on the score on their records. These guys last met at UFC 132 in 2011, so that was 5 years ago, shockingly enough, when Cruz retained his title. Since that fight, Faber's gone 8-3 with losses to Frankie Edgar and 2 to Renan Barão, all with 2 of the Barão fights both had the title on the line. Frankie Edgar was a fight that took place at featherweight. Now, Cruz, since his win over Faber, defended his title against Demetrius Johnson in a fantastic matchup. He returned in 2014 to KO Takeo Mizugaki and then recaptured his title in early 2016 against TJ Dillashaw. In that matchup against Dillashaw, Cruz was coming off a massive layoff again. He looked very, very good in a long fight, which had a lot of people skeptical of how quickly he finished Mizugaki. How was he going to be able to hold up over a long matchup? He proved a lot of his doubters wrong. He did slow down late in that fight because of a leg injury, but it was still a great performance, and I picked him to win, and he certainly did deserve the nod from the judges. In recent memory, Faber has struggled at times despite winning matchups against Francisco Rivera really had him in some trouble. Pushed the pace, hurt him with a couple big strikes. Frankie Saenz really gave him a close fight in a matchup. I thought Urijah Faber would just bowl him over, but Saenz really put up a tough fight and hung in there. This bout, to me, is the product of the rivalry between these two guys. I don't think if Faber, based on the way he's fought recently, has really earned a title shot, but the UFC sees the opportunity to stick him in there one more time together and build up Dominick Cruz, or potentially crown Faber a champion, which seems like they've been trying to do for a long time. Faber 0-6 since he lost his title to Mike Brown at WEC 36 way back in the day. He's 0-6 in title fights. That's a statistic, and the only other loss in that time frame was the loss to Frankie Edgar, but that's a very telling statistic about how he does against top-level opposition. For Cruz, since his loss to Faber, he has won 12 consecutive matchups, including 6 fights with the title on the line one way or another. Very, very impressive. Now, in their last matchup when they fought, Faber scored a couple of knockdowns early, which certainly, he was able to clip. Cruz really didn't, wobble him, but still dropped him on his butt, which is certainly a confidence builder for a guy who hardly gets hit at all. Statistically, Cruz landed 90 significant strikes compared to just 50 for the challenger. Dominick Cruz also won the takedown battle, landing 4 takedowns compared to just 1 against Urijah Faber. Overall, Faber struggled to keep up with his volume. And I just lost my place here. And but his best round was the I believe it was the third round. Sorry, round 4. He landed 24 he got outlanded 24-18, but he kept the round much closer. In the final round, Cruz really turned to his wrestling and scored a trio of takedowns on 7 attempts that really cemented home that victory. And when you look at Faber, he's not a high-volume striker. The gap between the times he gets hit and the strikes he actually lands on his opponents is closing. 0.27 is his positive striking exchange rate. And it could very well dip below the even mark after this matchup if Cruz can put it on him. So Faber does not put up good numbers. That's not good for an elite fighter if he's unable to distance himself from his opponent. Additionally, 1.58 takedowns per fight at a 38% completion rate. Not big numbers. A lot of times he only needs 1 takedown to, he's like a dog on a bone. He goes for that takedown. He might fail 3 or 4 times. Eventually gets it and locks up a submission. But if you're a guy who's difficult to submit and Faber's not able to take you down, he's going to have to up those numbers to really make his wrestling count by sheer volume of completions. So, on the other side of things, Faber has struggled at times with being taken down. Frankie Edgar took him down, I think, 6 times and really dominated him on the mat. Cruz had a lot of success putting him on the ground as well in those fights. And for a wrestler, even though he's a very capable BJJ guy, for a wrestler, it's not a good position to be put on the mat when you're not expecting it. Now, Dominick Cruz, positive 1.35 striking exchange rate, so he's hitting his opponents almost 1.5 times more than they're hitting him. I thought that stretch would be different. It's probably been up by the number that TJ landed. He landed 109 strikes. Prior to that, the worst Cruz had been hit in the UFC was against Mighty Mouse, where he got tagged 63 times. So TJ had a lot of success, just not enough of it. But you see the difference between TJ Dillashaw, Demetrius Johnson and Urijah Faber in their striking styles. You probably can see that without me explaining it to you. Cruz, excellent footwork, really likes the uppercut, good left hook, punches from all kinds of angles, forces his opponent to react to his movement. He has a nice leaping right hook that he'll throw while exiting out the side, chopping leg kicks, really whips that leg around when he's moving away to really do damage and stay out of range. At times, he tends to duck his head when being attacked, or when attacking, he needs to avoid ducking into possible uppercuts. We did see both Faber and Johnson hurt him on the break from clinch positions, which is something, if you can get him stationary, maybe you can put your hands on him. That's your best opportunity to hurt him. Again, as I said, Cruz against Faber, overall, he does a very nice job of augmenting his volume with takedowns. And when he can take guys down, he took Faber down 4 times in 11 attempts, it really magnifies everything else he does very well. For Faber, for him to be successful, and the way he is successful in other fights, he needs to be either the faster striker or the better wrestler, or some combination of the two. Keep up with the volume, land the takedowns. Can't land the takedowns, outwork his opponent, land better strikes. He is neither one of those. He has neither one of those check marks in his corner in this fight. Cruz's constant move is going to make Faber's linear, bullish style of rushing forward and landing strikes very ineffective. There are still concerned that Cruz could be slowed by injuries or possibly get hurt during the fight like he did last time and have to lose that way, but we can't really bank on that. Faber looks to me like he's lost a step in his last couple matchups. Remember, he's 37 years old. That's very old for the lighter divisions. Cruz only 31, despite the fact that it feels like they've both been around forever. I think Cruz is going to land some takedowns. He's going to avoid the majority of Faber's offense. He's going to land his strikes, really push the pace. It's going to force Faber to get desperate when he's moving forward. I think Cruz will time him at some point, catch Faber with some kind of counter strike, and my prediction is Dominick Cruz to defeat Urijah Faber by TKO. We move now to the main event of the evening, also a rematch, this time though the middleweight title will be on the line as the current champion, 15-2-0 Luke Rockhold, looks to retain his belt against the 4th-ranked Michael the Count Bisping with a current record of 19 wins and 7 defeats. Now, Bisping's taking this matchup on 2 weeks' notice. He's been waiting for this opportunity all of his career, said he couldn't turn down an opportunity to fight for the title, and he's certainly gung-ho to do so. For Rockhold, he has been prepping for Chris Weidman, the man he took the title from. Certainly, Bisping represents a different opponent, but considering this is a rematch from a couple of from 2 years ago, he has a lot of familiarity with Michael Bisping. They last fought at Ultimate Fight Night Brazil in late 2014. Brisbane, my apologies, in late 2014. Since that matchup, Bisping has gone 3-0, including victories for Talis Latis and Anderson Silva. For Rockhold, he's gone 2-0, taking out Lyoto Machida to earn a title shot, and then taking the title from Chris Weidman. He stopped both of them, and of course, considering this is his first opportunity to retain his title, you're not a champion until you retain that title belt. Ask for Mauricio Verdun firsthand to explain that to you. So this is a big fight for Luke Rockhold. In their first matchup, Rockhold won by second-round submission after landing a nice head kick knockdown. There was a pretty bad eye poke involved in that matchup where Rockhold got Bisping. A couple other controversial things, but nonetheless, it was a pretty impressive performance by the now champion. Significant strikes in that fight, 20-16 for Rockhold. Bisping over 2 in takedown attempts and simply could not find his rhythm. Physically, the champ, 2 inches taller, with a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's 5 years younger. So that's check, check, check. 3 scenarios where he is the better, or at least has the advantage. He's a BJ black belt, 4 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission, 2-0 in the scorecards. He has 10 first-round finishes. And his last 3 matchups, he has gone to the second round or beyond. And overall, he has 2 losses by knockout as well. So that gives you a little bit of a rundown of what he has been doing. For Bisping, despite the fact that he has a reputation for not being a hard striker, 15 wins by knockout, 4 by submission, 9-4 in the scorecards. He does have 2 losses by KO against Henderson and Belfort, and the 1 submission loss to Luke Rockhold, which was preceded by getting knocked down. For Rockhold, he's very confident right now. Constant pressure with his striking, not a frantic type guy who's going to come forward and throw all kinds of stuff at you. He's very calculated, really stalks forward, overwhelms guys. Not with his pace so much, but just with his aggression and ability to come forward and not be deterred by what he gets thrown back at him. The grappling, though, for Rockhold has really played a massive role in his success. He was able to control both Machida and Bisping on the mat, wrap them up, with his long libs, ride them, land some huge ground and pound. He had a lot of success against Chris Weidman on the floor, which really caught a lot of people off guard, wore him out. He scored 2 takedowns. He gave up 3, but even when he was taken down, he was very aggressive off his back. And he ultimately landed 126 significant strikes to just 48 for the former champion, and a lot of that came from the top position, landing ground and pound. When he's on the feet, he has an exceptionally good kicking game, back leg round kick to the body, which is very hard low kicks. As I said, he took out Bisping with that brutal head kick. His hands pretty solid as well, lead left hook, doubles it up frequently, and he countered Lyoto Machida coming forward, hurt him with a left hand as well. For the challenger, Michael Bisping has had issues with being a bit of a slow starter, and he has also had issues with facing confident power strikers. Like he fought Luke Rockhold, Dan Henderson, Vitor Belfort. He really struggled to sit down on his punches and wasn't nearly as effective. Kind of almost waiting for the inevitable to happen, waiting for them to attack and see if he could avoid it and then go to work. It didn't happen. His biggest weapons, though, are his cardio and his pressure. But can he consistently push the pace without getting hit? He had a lot of success doing it against Anderson Silva, but some of what Silva did played a role there. Bisping kept attacking Silva. He hurt him a couple of times, had him backing up. Silva was clowning and not really. It seemed at times he was just not fighting up to his full potential, not fighting smart, if you will, and that allowed Bisping to really get the job done and take that decision, despite Silva almost knocking him out. Bisping's at his best when he can push the pace and attack and make his opponent work their way backwards. I think he's going to struggle to do that against Luke Rockhold, who's not the type of guy to take a backward step. We saw Bisping have some trouble when he was under pressure, when he was struggling. He was getting pushed into the cage, and Lay just had a lot of success hurting him in those positions. I think Rockhold will do something similar as well. Bisping can't afford to sit and wait on Luke Rockhold. Has to be the first striker, stuff the takedowns, get his respect. That's not going to be easy for the challenger. Rockhold, I think, keeps Bisping on the outside with his reach, with his kicks, eventually takes him down, leading to either ground and pound or submission potential. And my prediction is Luke Rockhold to defeat Michael Bisping by TKO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 199. If you want to get all my preliminary picks, they will be shortened, but they will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net as well as with the bet pack will be there as well. Please check all that out. Follow the prediction panel. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook. Vote in the polls, please. Let us know who you think is going to win each fight. It's always fun to see how that goes down. And hopefully I'll be feeling better in the not too distant future and be able to be up and around again. But as always, thank you for tuning in, guys, and I will see you back here. I think we get a week off, and then we get the UFC 189 event, which takes place in Ottawa, Canada. So I'm very excited about that. So talk to you soon, guys. Take care.